This is Daily Armenia, CivilNet's daily news digest. Here's what you need to know today. The top diplomats of Armenia and Ukraine held talks over the weekend to review the state of relations between their two countries and discuss a range of security issues. Foreign ministers Ararat Mirzoyan and Dmytro Kuleba focused on ways to deepen bilateral ties and international cooperation, particularly in light of Ukraine's future European Union membership, Kyiv said in a readout. The diplomats also spoke on ongoing efforts to reach an Armenia-Azerbaijan normalization deal, Yerevan added. The meeting came just weeks after Armenia took part in Western-backed peace talks on Ukraine, even while declining to sign on to a joint communique drafted at the end of that summit. Armenia's warming ties with Ukraine come as the country's relations with Russia continue to fray. Since the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, anger and frustration have mounted in Yerevan over what is seen as Moscow's unwillingness or inability to come to Armenia's defense in line with its treaty obligations. Still, Armenia remains highly dependent on Russia. To that point, Yerevan's envoy to Moscow today visited the frontline Russian city of Belgorod, where 17 civilians were killed in May when a fragment of a Ukrainian missile shot down by Russia fell onto an apartment block. Here you can feel just one thing: sympathy and understanding of the full scale of this grief. And naturally, the desire arises for all of this to end as quickly as possible, Ambassador Vagharsha Kharutyunyan was quoted as saying by Russia's TASS news agency. Earlier this year, Armenia dispatched its ambassador in Ukraine to Bucha, the city outside of Kyiv that has become synonymous with Russian war crimes and other atrocities. The spokesperson for Russia's foreign ministry quickly condemned that visit as an openly unfriendly step. Armenia's prime minister has signaled he would not support holding a referendum in the country on joining the EU, claiming the Armenian people's support for Europe is already clear, but also acknowledging that Brussels may not be ready to accept Yerevan. Speaking today at a democracy forum in Yerevan, Nikol Pashinyan in effect ruled out a suggestion last week from Armenia's parliament speaker, a close political ally, to hold a vote on EU membership. They're saying, let's hold a referendum in order to show and provide the opportunity for the people to support that idea. I'm sorry, I myself, speaking at the European Parliament, announced that Armenia is ready to be as close to the EU as the EU deems possible. If I had thought that the people of Armenia did not support that idea, I would not have made such a statement, Pashinyan said. Continuing, the Prime Minister also expressed doubts on the political appetite in Brussels to take on Yerevan's potential membership, admitting, now the question is, how ready is the EU? I cannot give an answer to that question today. That directly contradicts remarks by Speaker Simonyan, who told Latvia's public broadcaster last week, I think that someday in the near future we will have a referendum, and I am sure that our people will say yes. Last month, Armenian lawmakers held a historic debate on applying to the EU, but made no final decisions at that session. In related news, European leaders indicated last week that Georgia's passage of a controversial foreign agents law in May has de facto led to a halt of the accession process of that country to the bloc. Passed amid massive protests and despite international warning, the law requires non-governmental organizations in Georgia to register with the government and imposes onerous reporting requirements on them. You can also check out the latest edition of CivilNet's weekly business digest. This week, we break down the latest developments around Armenia's long-stalled Amulsar gold mine project, as well as a historic shareholder lawsuit brought against the government last month over a Russian oligarch's takeover of the Zangezur combine, the country's biggest mine. You can find the full broadcast up now on civilnet.am or through the link in the video description below. And finally, the CivilNet number of the day is 80. That's the rough percentage of healthcare payments in Armenia that are made out of patients' pockets, one of the highest rates in the world. The Armenian government has repeatedly delayed long-discussed plans to introduce a state-funded universal healthcare system. The World Bank approved a $110 million loan to the government last Friday to help fund efforts to that end. And as always, please follow CivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.